I ask what war you participated in and the branch of...
Is World War II.
Mm-hmm. And were you in the Army? What branch of service?
The Army Air Force.
Army Air Force. And when you left the Army Air Force, what was your rank?
Staff Sergeant.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And where did you serve during the war? What areas? What locations?
Locations in the South Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Guadalcanal, Munda,
Mm-hmm.
Admiralty Islands,
Yes.
a couple other little minor places. I
Okay.
can't remember the names of them now. They,
Yeah, that's
I was only
okay.
there a short time on not any of them.
Mm-hmm. What were the years that you were in the Army Air Force?
What year did I live there?
What? Yes.
19...
I have 1942 to 1945.
47, right.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Make sure. Now, at the time, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I'm sorry?
At the time you entered the Army Air Force, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I drafted
Mm-hmm. And where were you living at the time?
in the town of Colebrook
Here in Connecticut?
in Connecticut.
You're a real Connecticut Yankee. Yes.
Yankee,
Yeah. And you, why did you join the Army Air Force?
because that's where they drafted me.
Okay, okay, okay.
I took the examination, and apparently I got a pretty good mark, and they set me up for the Air Corps.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, thinking way back, do you remember entering the Army Air Corps? Do you remember your first days?
I was February
1942.
1922.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I can't remember the month.
Mm-hmm. What happened after you were drafted?
I was drafted. I went to Fort Devens,
Yep.
and from there I went to Miami Beach.
Mm-hmm.
I took basic training there, what they did of it. And then I went to Mississippi, Gulfport, Mississippi,
Mm-hmm.
and I was instructed in all phases of airplanes.
So that's when you had your hands-on training with airplanes?
No, I was only instructed.
Okay.
I'll take that back. I did run the plane up one day.
Mm-hmm.
I started it and run it for just momentarily,
Mm-hmm.
then shut it down, and then someone else took it over. And from there, we went to that was where I took basic airplane mechanics there. And then I went to San Diego, California,
Right.
and went on to the Consolidated Aircraft property, actually, and they had a camp set up for the Army, and we were instructed in specific aircraft that Consolidated Aircraft made, and I can't remember whether it's B-18 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
My memory's going.
Well, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But my memory's gone the last 2 years
Mm-hmm.
for some reason or other. Don't ask me why. But it's gone. And we went there and we learned the whole workings of that airplane from stem to stern.
Mm-hmm.
We were on the night shift. We went to work at, I don't know, 6 o'clock or something like that. And no, we went to work at 4 o'clock. And then we had a break, went to supper, and then we got to about 10 o'clock or 11, I'm not sure of that. And we learned all about the plane. We were brought through the plane and instruction. And then from there, we went to Arizona. Oh, we went there for small arms training because we didn't get it in our basic training. And from there, we were...
Now, what was small arms training? What was that training like? The small arms.
It was a 4-engine plane,
Mm-hmm.
wingspan of 110 feet, 65 feet long, I believe it was, and carried a crew of 10.
Mm-hmm.
It had 10 machine guns on it, and of course they carried a bomb load of considerable weight, maybe 15 ton to a trip, depending what they were carrying. And they would, like I said, it was carry 10 men,
Mm-hmm.
and pilot, co-pilot,
Navigator?
navigator,
Yeah.
bombardier, and 8 crew members.
Mm-hmm.
And the crew members would follow the machine guns, and when required.
Yes.
But when they got to the target, they were carried all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if they had any, they shot what they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard what they shot at, but they shot at airplanes and ground. They would just shoot a likely story, carpets on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and then they bring the plane back, and then the ground crew had to put the plane back in order,
Mm-hmm.
Refuel it, make any repairs that had to be done on the engines, and then before every flight, the ground crew had to see that the plane was fit to fly. We had to, there was 2 men, we had to be there 2 hours before takeoff, and we would check, pre-flight the plane for everything that had to be on it. That we would have to check the bomb. Well, we'd look at the bomb load, we didn't know anything about it, and we didn't know anything about the machine guns, but we would see that things were in place,
Mm-hmm.
and the wingspans and the tail section, that we had to check all the moving parts to make sure they were moving okay.
Now, after you went to, now did you do this training in Arizona?
They wouldn't?
Did you do the training in Arizona?
Yeah, we would go over there ready for air.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that, because sometimes we had to fly in it.
Okay.
So we made sure that,
Yes.
always made sure the plane was in good condition, because we never knew which plane we were going to be flying in.
Mm-hmm.
And I flew several times, not on missions. We weren't allowed to fly missions. Only on a special occasion, maybe you could get permission. Other than that, a regular flight, we were called upon to do flight,
Mm-hmm.
like a flight engineer. And I was a flight engineer many times
Mm-hmm.
on the plane. Sometimes I just go along for the ride, see that everything going smoothly, and then when we got through, we'd have to check the plane out again.
Mm-hmm. Now, after, was that all the training that you had? And then did you go directly to, into,
I didn't hear what he said.
can you tell us your service number?
31249042. That was my service number.
And you remember it
Yeah.
all these years later?
Hmm?
And all these years later,
All
you
these
still
years.
remember it?
They said we would never forget it.
Ah, okay. Now, I wanted to ask you, after you left your training, where did they send you? After you were through being trained, where did you go?
We went to San Diego, California,
Okay.
and that's where we ended our training sessions there. And from there we boarded the, I can't remember the name of the ship now,
Mhm.
but it was a passenger boat, and we got on that in Los Angeles. I think it was, excuse me, San Francisco, because we went underneath the Golden Gate Bridge going out, and I come back, we went under the Golden Gate Bridge. But there were two different ships. But it was a passenger ship, luxury liner actually, that we went down to the south, down to the South Pacific. And we were way west of where any action was. They followed the Gulf Coast of South America. They didn't tell us that, but I know they weren't too far from it.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down to New Caledonia, and we were taken off from New Caledonia,
Mm-hmm.
and we were broken up into different parties there. And then from there we went through Guadalcanal. And that's where I first started working on airplanes, at Guadalcanal. Well, when I first went to Guadalcanal, let me tell you this. I went to Guadalcanal to be a mechanic. I got on the canal, and I was a carpenter. I built a stand to show movie pictures.
Ah.
And it had a cover on it and everything, so they could have, if it started to rain, they could still show the movie. And I built a cover, a little cabin for them to show the movies on that. And it was a beautiful place to do it, because it was in a gully there, and the screen was up on a hill, and the screen was in back of it, and the people sat on farm crates down in front, and we showed movies there until we got a flood. And we got flooded out, and they took everything out and moved it up onto the high ground, and there I didn't have anything to do with it. So, but it was, this was carpenter work on a part-time basis.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, actually, my crews were on a rest leave, as they called it there, and so we had nothing to do, so they put us to work making this little cabin light to put, show this movies from it, and then the flood come along, took everything out, so they moved up on the high ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who worked on that. I was a mechanic at that
Mm-hmm.
point. I was, actually, when they done that, I was on Munda, on a temporary basis up there. What they would do, they would fly 6 weeks out of out of Munda, and they'd fly the 6 weeks. Then they'd come back and rest, go back to the canal, and then another 2 crews would go up and fly, go onto the on the upper part and fly out of there. They were like a rest period there,
Mm-hmm.
6 weeks rest period, and that ended the rest period times. I don't know what happened to it, but they just didn't do it anymore. Then they would fly us, well, we worked on them every day for the end of the war. The whole cruise had to work. We had all 24 planes on the same field, and it flies one crew for, I don't know, maybe a week or something like that. Then they take them off, put another crew, send another crew out, and then while that plane was being rested there, they were using it for training, or we had mechanical problems, we'd have to work on that. And that was the end of the rest period,
Mm-hmm.
periods.
Excuse me. Now, were you ever in combat?
Beg pardon?
Were you ever in combat?
No,
Okay.
I never carried a rifle except for 4 or 5 days at one time on the Mordai. We were on there, and they had a threat that maybe we're going to be invaded.
Mm-hmm.
So they had us carry our small arms, and we carried them for a week. And that's the only time I ever carried a rifle over there. Other than that, never fired it, never saw the enemy
Mm-hmm.
close up. He was always up there 20,000 feet.
Yeah.
He'd be flying over at nighttime. And when I found out where he was, I'd go back in my sack or bed and watch him fly over and watch the other planes chase him down. Sometimes they caught him, sometimes they didn't.
What did the planes look like when they came back?
They come back in good shape.
They usually did?
Yeah, sometimes they have a few bullet holes in them,
Mm-hmm.
but most generally they come back in good shape.
And how about the pilots and the crew? Did you hang out with the pilots and the crew on your rest periods or your downtime?
Beg pardon?
Did you spend time with the pilots and the crew?
No,
No?
no, we never saw them on the ground. One time we would see them probably going to mess drill for meals.
Mm-hmm.
would see them walking back and forth. We never mingled together.
Okay, that was the word I was thinking of.
I don't know why. We just never did.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk with the combat crews, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we'd get a little friendly and then we would talk to one another. But
Now, were you awarded any medals?
no,
No medals. Or citations?
only the ordinary medals.
Well, I don't think any medals are ordinary.
Yeah, they were issued to everybody.
Well, people had to be there
Yeah,
to get them, and they had to work.
yeah. To me, those were ordinary medals. But so it was awarded to everybody. Medal to me is a special medal for a specific thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I want to ask you also, do you remember any of the people that you worked with? Did they have any particular characteristics that you remember?
The men I worked with?
Yes.
Yeah, one was Bruce Leitner. He was my crew chief.
Mm-hmm.
Lum Edwards, I don't remember what his first name is. But we call him Lum.
Uh-huh.
Lum Edwards, he was in the crew. What the heck was his name? There was a couple other guys I remember. And I can't remember their names now, and I knew them well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
When you were in San Diego and some of the other places stateside, did you go out with them to see the sights?
We saw no white people over there.
Really?
No white people.
Mm-hmm.
Guadalcanal was nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a few natives. We used to talk. When they came around, we'd talk with them if we could.
Mm-hmm.
Barter with them. They were looking for cigarettes mainly.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd sell them cigarettes if we had some.
Mm-hmm.
White people, no, we never. Well, I'll take that back. Yeah, we did. We saw Jack Benny.
Oh.
Jack Benny was over there. We saw him
Mm-hmm.
as an
Entertainer.
entertainer. What was it?
Was that with the USO?
Yeah, that was USO.
Mhm.
That was it. They were the only ones that could come on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, no one come on the island. Unless they were Australian.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have made a misstatement there. I said, didn't see any other people. We did. We saw Australians there, soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a few lady Australian military members.
Mm-hmm.
We saw them and talked with them. We danced with them. We had a party one night, and we danced with them, sang songs with them, and we had a nice time with them.
Good. Good. Now, speaking of remembering former times and people, do you remember anything in particular from your training in the boot camp when you went directly from civilian life to the boot camp?
I'm sorry.
Do you remember anything in particular in the boot camp when you left civilian life?
You mean boot camp?
Yep.
No, nothing particular
No,
there, no,
no.
nothing exciting.
I'll bet it was a change.
The only thing, one guy went over the hill, as the saying goes. He snuck out of camp. Well, he didn't sneak out, he just walked out of camp and went home. We never heard from him afterwards.
Hmm.
So I don't know whether he's in jail or where he is.
Now, when you were in the military, how did you keep in touch with your family at home?
What's that?
How did you keep in touch with your family at home? Did you write?
All right. We slept all right.
No. Did you write lots of letters to your
Yeah,
family?
letters, yeah. I was sneaky on writing letters home from the islands because nobody knew where anybody was.
Mm-hmm.
But I devised a plan. I had 3 brothers, but I wrote to one specific brother, and every time I wrote to him, I would put down the letter, his middle name letter, the name of the island that we were on. Like he was like Guadalcanal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I put his middle initial G. The next time I wrote, I'd change it to the next letter. And the next time I wrote, I'd put the next letter. He caught on to it right away. But the trouble is, he never wrote back and told me that they knew where they were, or where I was. And I had to go through the whole letter. And Guadalcanal is quite a long thing.
Yes, it is.
So I wrote a lot of letters, but I changed that this middle initial to, every time I wrote. I didn't write every day. I probably write once a week or once every 2 weeks, and then would get a change. Would change on,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd have to start all over again. And I couldn't say, well, I'm on a new island now, and I don't know, I'd put it some way. And but I'd start out with the middle initial, the first initial of the next island that we were on, and we'd go through the whole thing there. And
Very clever.
and that way we were never caught by the media,
Mm-hmm.
because they watched the letters pretty careful to see what was written in them. But oh gosh, the stuff they cut out was terrible. I can't imagine what I ever wrote that they wanted to cut out, but they did. And you wanted to tell them what you were doing. So apparently that's what they cut that stuff out. I couldn't say I was working on a plane or anything like that. They'd cut it out. So they never knew at home what I was doing.
Now, did you have a sweetheart at that time?
Is that?
Did you have a sweetheart at that time that you wrote to?
No.
No.
I wrote to a couple girls, but that wasn't no specific one.
Okay. Okay. Now, when you were over on Guadalcanal, what did you eat?
Would we eat?
Mm-hmm.
Spam. Sometimes they'd have ham,
Mm-hmm.
slices of ham, but actually I don't recall much what we did eat.
Okay.
Outside of Spam, that was very popular food. We had that 3 times a day.
Oh.
And the reason for that, you know what Spam is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I don't have to go into detail on that, but we had that so about 3 times a day. They fix it up different ways, from one day to another. But other than that, ordinary foods.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we had no potatoes, no fresh meats. We had no refreshment, no refrigerators.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you had a refrigerator, it was transportation. Would be the few, because of the heat there, the stuff would spoil quick.
Now, did you get any packages from home?
Hmm?
Did you receive any packages from home?
Yeah, I received a few.
What was in them?
No candy, cookies. That's about all of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when you were working on the planes, did you find that you had enough supplies?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we never had run short on those.
Oh, good. And did you feel under pressure at any time?
Under pressure?
Mm-hmm.
No, not really. Not really, no. We had no combat, so like I say, only 1 week here we had to carry rifles because they expected an invasion, and other than that, we never.
Was there something special that you did for good luck? You know, some people carry a 4-leaf clover for good luck. Was there anything you did for good luck?
No, not really.
Okay. Okay. And how did you entertain yourself?
How do we entertain?
Mm-hmm.
Playing poker,
Mm-hmm.
blackjack. That was about it.
And you had the USO.
Shows once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can think of 2 of them that we had. Maybe 3.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't that popular.
Really?
They were popular when they got there. But of course, we didn't know they were coming. And they got there. But we only had 2 or 3 actual shows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when you weren't on the islands, what did you do when you went on leave?
What's that?
When you weren't on the island, when you were stationed in Arizona or San Francisco or some of the other places, what did you like to do when you went on leave?
Well, we'd go to town, go to a restaurant, get something good to eat,
Mm-hmm.
Watch the people walk up and down the streets. But that was about the size of it.
Okay.
Sometimes we'd meet up with somebody and go to a movie or some other kind of entertainment.
Mm-hmm. And while you were in the service, did you travel to any particular place?
Travel?
Mm-hmm.
No.
No. Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual event?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Do you recall any particular humorous event? Anything that happened that was funny or that you remember that was unusual?
No, not really.
Okay. Okay. Did you like to pull pranks on each other?
Yeah,
Like what?
my friends,
Yes.
well, the guys I was with,
Mm-hmm.
there was a few of those that were particular. One of them was, what's his first name? His last name is Gray. Oh, God. I know him as well as I know my own name.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was a Gray and I was a Gray.
Mm-hmm.
And he lived up in Massachusetts, and I lived in Connecticut. And we became pretty good friends.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he was my best man
Ah.
when we got married. And he has since passed away. Wesley.
Mm-hmm.
He was Wesley. I think his name was either Edward Wesley or Wesley Edward Gray.
Mm-hmm.
And we become good friends.
Now, what did you think of your fellow soldiers?
What's that?
What did you think of the crew that you worked with?
Well, think of the crew.
Yeah.
We were good friends. We never quarreled. Got along fine. They were good guys. One guy became a preacher.
Ah.
We used to rib him once in a while.
Mm-hmm. And what did you think of the officers?
Think of the officers.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see them. The only ones we saw were the flight crews. Other than that, we didn't see the other crew, the other crewmen we didn't see very much. We'd see them once a week, or once a month, 8
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have a camera? Did you have a camera and take photographs?
No,
No.
I didn't have one, somebody else had one.
Mm-hmm.
But we were told not to bring them over. Well, I didn't have a good camera, I don't know what to take. But we were told not to take them because film was would be hard to get. It would be hard to keep the film because of the heat. But they took a lot of pictures though. I've got a lot of pictures home.
You do have a lot of them at home.
No,
No.
I did have
You did.
afterwards, but not during
Mm-hmm.
the service, no.
Okay. Now, did you keep a diary or a journal?
Yeah, sort of one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We weren't supposed to, but I did. Nobody questioned it.
And what kinds of things would you enter in the diary? What kinds of things would you write
What kind of things did we write?
in the diary?
Or what work we did maybe for the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we could do.
Yeah? Yeah?
Or it rained.
Mm-hmm.
We could have had a pouring rain all day or something like that, but not much. There wasn't much to write about.
Now, do you remember the day your military service ended?
Oh yeah,
Where were you?
Fort Devens, Massachusetts.
And what did you do right after you were after you left the service?
What did I do?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for 1 year, in one season, I worked in an evergreen farm, digging trees and selling trees and digging long, planting long. General work out of an evergreen farm. And then from there I went to the state, and I worked in with the Connecticut State Agriculture Experiment Station, and I worked as a crew member looking for gypsy moth. You know what gypsy moth are?
Well, why don't you tell me? I'm not sure. I don't know.
Gypsy moths have a little tan nest that are laid in the late summer on the underside of the tree limbs, even on all over on the tree, not especially on top. They would be on other some bushes, not much. But we would look for the egg clusters in the winter months, and the egg clusters would hatch in about the first week in May, when they started to warm up, and then they'd come out little, very tiny caterpillars, and the caterpillars would eat the leaves off of their specific trees, especially oak trees. They would skim them. They would take all the leaves off, and it was supposed to kill the tree, but I don't think it killed any tree. It killed a few, but not many. And I've done that for 10 years, and then I went into the post office, and I was postmaster in Riverton, Connecticut. I was a postmaster there in a third-class office, and I used to travel with around the state. I was become a state officer, and I traveled around on my own accord, my own expense. I traveled around there, and we used to get the 5-state convention: Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. And we had a 3-day convention. And we had a lot of fun doing that, a lot of education. And then later on, I went to several national conventions. And there, I became transportation person for one particular guy. He wanted me on transportation, and we had to go and pick up people at the airports and bring them to the hotel, and then we'd have to bring them back to the airport when they were going home, and or going wherever they're going. And I found that very interesting, because I had a chance to meet our politicians. I'd be the only one in the car, and they could say anything they wanted to. And that was very, well, it was educational. It was very dramatic for me, because I had higher up politicians. They would be called in to give speeches at the convention, so we'd have to transport them back and forth. And other people were besides that. And sometimes I one day I was told to go and bring in a musician. I didn't know who he was, what his name was, or anything else. I guess I did have his name. And I meet him at the airport. Well, I knew what flight he was coming in on, and I was there in time. And I got right by the game part, and people were coming down. I'd say, "Are you so-and-so?" "No." And next, "Oh, yes, sir, you know me." And so he was a musician. And I transported him to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really educational to do that. To me, it was. Maybe anybody else would have, they were bored with it or something. But I found it interesting. Because I was talking to people one-on-one that I wouldn't get otherwise, especially the politicians.
Now, you didn't, did you decide to go back to school on the GI Bill?
I bought my house on the GI Bill.
All right. And that was after you were married?
It was after the war, after we were married.
Now, were you able to keep in touch with a lot of the friends you made in this service?
No, not really.
No, you didn't, okay. Were you a member of a veterans organization? Were you a member of any veterans organizations?
No.
No, like the American Legion? No.
Oh, yeah, I belong to the American
Yes.
Legion,
Yes.
yeah, I belong to that.
Okay, so your career after you left the military sounds interesting. You worked for the state, and then you worked for the post office.
Yeah,
And then what did you do?
retired.
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 Retired. Now, did your military experience influence you in any way about thinking about the military in general or the war?
I do.
Did your military experience influence you in your later life?
No.
No. All right. Okay. Is there anything you've told me a lot about what's happened? Is there anything you would like to add that I haven't asked you?
I don't know what you've asked me what I've done, and that's about it.
Well, why don't we end up then with you were
I belong to
you
several
know,
other organizations.
like what?
The Masons, Order of Eastern Star, Improved Order of Redmond, which you probably never even heard of. And I was an officer in all of those. I was a past master of the lodge, and past master of some of the other organizations. And I was Order of Eastern Star, Order of the Evening. Oh gosh. Yeah, Evening Star. Yeah. I was a past patron of that for 11 years. That's the head one of the...
Right. So you were very busy. You were very active.
Yeah,
And you were married, and did you have children?
yeah, I have 2 daughters.
Are they in the area?
Yeah, One of them lives 5 minutes from here, and the other one lives about a half an hour from here.
Mm-hmm.
And I got, I don't know, 5 great, I don't know, I'll say I got 5 great grandchildren. Cut it off. What do you want now?
Where were you when you heard that the war was over?
Where was I? I can't think of the island.
But you were in the Pacific.
Oh yeah, I was still there, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like? Was everybody running around? Were they excited?
Oh, I don't know. I was in Australia when the war ended.
Mm-hmm.
I went down. I went down flew down to Australia for a Fat Cat plane. The Fat Cat would go down, get a load of food, eggs, meat. I don't know what else they bought. I know they got eggs and stuff like that. And it would get a plane load, and probably there would probably be a ton, two ton of stuff in that plane. They would fly that back to the island, and would have a good feast on home cooked eggs. And other foods, bacon would be one of the things we got. I don't remember what other stuff we got. But we had other foods that they got, and I went down with that. And I got ready to leave, and I had put gasoline in that day to fill it up. And they got ready to take off in the morning, and they says, I smell gasoline, and they bam, bam. Oh no, oh no. I knew exactly what it was. An inspection plate on top of the gas tank sprung a leak, and it was leaking gas down into the bomb bay. And the pilot says, to me, he says, what's the prognosis? I said, a half an hour out of here, you'll never know there was gasoline there. He said, I can't take a chance. So I had to take I'm alone down in Australia to fix that plane. To get into that Bombay tank, there was 12 or 1,400 screws to take out, and 12 or 1,400 to put back in alone. Nobody would help me. So I took all the screws out, took that tank out myself, which was a load in itself, and I put a new one back in, and I think I put it in my load. Then I went back and put those 1,200 screws back on that plane, alone in Australia.
What an experience.
I done that all alone, no help from anybody. I asked other guys, oh no, that's this.
Well, I want to thank you very much for agreeing to this oral history interview, and I want to thank you very much for your service to our country. It is very much appreciated.
Well, I want to thank you very much for asking me. I don't know why, because there must be somebody else around here besides me, but I don't know who they are. But I thank you very much for asking me, and I hope I answered your questions. I know I couldn't answer some of them, But all of a sudden, my mind is starting to go, I guess.
Well, I think you did very well. Thanks again.